So now that we've gone through creating histograms by hand, we're going to make our lives a little easier and see how technology can give us a hand. You can use any sort of spreadsheet program like Excel or Pages. We're going to be focusing on Google Sheets for this one, just because we can all access that one from home. So first things first, you can either enter the data into a new column in Excel or in your program. We have under our D2L page, if you go to the content and statistics, our first lesson here, histograms, all of these files are here for you. So opening the notes practice is going to open in a new tab or a new page this file that we'll be working with. So here we have the weight of all of those Edmonton Eskimos players, right? The same data we had on the sheet. So we're going to see how can we make that into a histogram and make the computer do the work for us. So first thing we're going to do is we're either going to enter the data, or if we're using this sheet here, we're going to use that. Make sure, so when you load in, it's going to say view only. You're going to make a copy to your own drive, right? Student practice. And then I would recommend, it might be helpful for you to create a folder inside your own drive so you can keep track of some of these files. Right? And so I'll save it. It'll open that new version, and now you can make changes to it. Right? You need to do that, or else you won't be able to create any charts or edit any of the data. So we are going to insert, and there's a chart option right here. And these instructions are over on the notes as well. And it's going to come up with, it might not show you histogram right off the bat. For me, it did. If it doesn't, you can scroll down to the very bottom where it says Other, and we have this histogram chart option. The data range, we want to select all of the cells, right? All of the little boxes on Excel that have the weights in them. So starting from A2, and if I click it, see it fills into the box for me. I can either click and drag, or I can hold the shift button while I click. And I want to make sure I'm selecting all of the numbers. I don't want to select this title, because it's not a numerical value. You can also just type this in if you know where your data is, right? This is in the cells A2, A being the column, 2 being the row, all the way down to, and it shows that including up to with a little colon there, A47. And I hit OK. And then it creates this histogram for us. So we want to make sure, if we're looking on the right-hand side here, our chart editor. So first thing was we made it a histogram. There's a section that is our histogram specific tools, and we'll be using this one a lot. Chart axis and titles. So this is so we can say the horizontal title is weight in pounds. We can say our vertical axis title, maybe we'll call this frequency, right? It shows up on the vertical axis. It tells us the series, that's just the data that we have. If I was graphing multiple things, I could make multiple histograms on one graph. Horizontal axis, so along the bottom, we can talk about the minimum and the maximum values. Right now, it looks like it goes from a minimum of 150 to a maximum of 350, which is just like our chart. Vertical axis, right? The scale factor, that's how much each chunk goes up by, right? If I want it to go up by 100, we're going to keep that one at default. We're going to keep most of this stuff the same. The main thing we want to work with here, other than the labels and including a title, right? That's under chart axis and title. Instead of calling this histogram of weight, which was auto-generated for me, I'm going to call this weights of Edmonton Eskimos players. Now, this one looks a little different than the one we made by hand because our, what Google refers to as bucket sizes, and which we looked at as ranges, are auto-generated by Google, which is great. It does the calculations for us, but not so great because it sometimes rounds at weird intervals. Right? I don't hugely care the difference between someone who's 183 pounds and someone who's 183.34 pounds. That now falls into a separate category. So our bucket size is where we can change that. It gives us some general ones. You can also type in your own custom one, but I'm going to go with the same thing we did in the handwritten one and choose a bucket size of 25. Notice that this makes the exact same graph that we just had, right? 150 to 175. And you can click on some of these values or hover your mouse over it once you're out of the edit menu, and it tells you the count. It's telling you the frequency. There was one weight between 150 and 175, and it shows us there that it was actually a value of 165. If I look at the second chart, right, 175 to 200, there was 13, just like we got in our table. If you ever want to edit again, you can go this little 3 dots at the top, edit the chart, and again, change things up. If you accidentally made the wrong chart type, you can adjust that. And under customize is where we want to make sure we're changing all of these things, right? The main things are under these two menus. Our histogram, making sure we're choosing an adequate bucket size, right? That's the size of the range of each bar along the bottom. Right? Choosing something rational, reasonable, generally in these multiples. But again, if you have really small numbers, you might want to go up by 0.5 or 0.2. Outlier percenter, we're not too worried about that one. And then just making sure that it's clearly labeled with all your titles, the chart title, the horizontal axis, and the vertical axis. Make sure those are customized to actually tell whoever's reading this graph what they're looking at. And then if you're unfamiliar with Excel, we can basically type in any of these boxes. So if you wanted to add some notes, right, your observations, so you could say no players weigh between 275 and 300 pounds. Right? You could say most players weigh between 175 and 200 pounds. Right? You can just add some notes, some information. We're going to be doing a lot of our assignments on Google Sheets, and it'll give you some space to answer those questions there. If we look back at the notes, so you had some instructions here as well, going through those same titles. I have a graph here. This was one I made originally. Notice this one looks a little bit different from our result. That's just because it has a different bucket size. Right? I went up by 20-pound intervals instead of 25. Notice things generally follow the same shape, right? Higher at the lower end of weights, less at the higher end, and not very many on the outside, and also that one anomaly. This time we have no zeros because our last range went from 275 to 300, but there was a single person at 270 pounds. Right, so notice how changing the bucket size can kind of adjust what our graph looks like, but really doesn't change the overall shape and trend of this information. And that's really the idea of normal distribution. That's really what we're going to get into in our following lessons. So there's a couple of other examples here for you to try. Those are, if you go back to our sheet, you have 2 tabs down here at the bottom. So you have your data. I want you to create a histogram and then explain, right, enter in some of these boxes here, what your understanding is, right? What did you understand from looking at that graph? Same thing with the second one. You have some test mark scores. See if you can make your own histogram, right, and explain what that means based on the graphical representation you're viewing. You can now complete the first mini assignment. So each of these lessons will be followed by a mini assignment going back to D2L, Everything about this lesson and this assignment is under this 1.1 histograms folder. So you have a link to the assignment, right, that goes through what's expected of you. And a rubric at the end here. So the first assignment is just creating a histogram, right? Tells you what you need. Your rubric here, you are representing and analyzing normally distributed data sets. And then if we also look, the next file is the data sets for you to be working with for that assignment. So you have a Google Sheet again. It gives you some data, it gives you a place to create your histogram and some questions that we want you to answer. When you're done with your assignment, you're going to go File, Download as a Microsoft Excel file. That way we can see what you've done, right? What you've changed, things like that. And then you're going to upload that to our assignments folder. So you'll see in here, I'll show you what I see. You'll see that there's a drop box for each of these assignments. So statistics, histograms, this is where you'll upload assignment number 1. So hopefully that's clear. Please drop into your teacher's tutorials if you have any questions or you're not sure on navigating Google Sheets. And good luck on your assignment.